positively must exist in our society. When we consider the circumstances in the midst of which our society is formed, I have tried to expose to the view of the public more distinctly than is commonly done one of the characters of the recent past. He is one of the representatives of a generation still living in this fragment entitled Underground. This person introduces himself and his views, and as it were, tries to explain the causes owing to which he has made his appearance and was bound to make his appearance in our midst. In the second fragment, there are added the actual notes of this person concerning certain events in his life. Author's note, Part 1, Underground. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. I am an unattractive man. I believe my liver is diseased. However, I know used to be in the government service but am no longer. I was a spiteful official. I was rude and took pleasure in being so. I did not take bribes, you see, so I was bound to find a recompense in that, at least. A poor jest, but I will not scratch it out. I wrote it thinking it would sound very witty, but now that I have seen myself, that I only wanted to show off in a despicable way, I will not scratch it out on purpose. When petitioners used to come for information to the table at which I sat, I used to grind my teeth at them and felt intense enjoyment when I succeeded in making in making in making in making making anybody unhappy, unhappy. I almost did succeed, but for the most part, they were all timid people. Of course, they were petitioners, but of the uppish ones, there was one officer in particular I could not endure. He simply would not be humble and clanked his sword in a disgusting way. I carried on a feud with him for 18 months over that sword. At last I got the better of him. He left off clanking it. That happened in my youth, though. But do you know, gentlemen, what was the chief point of my spite? Why, the whole point, the real sting of it, lay in the fact that continually, even in the moment of the acutest spleen, I was inwardly conscious with shame. spite. I was simply amusing myself with the petitioners and with the officer. And in reality, I never could become spiteful. I was conscious every moment in myself of many elements absolutely opposite to that. I felt them positively swarming in me. These opposite elements, I knew that they had been swarming in me all my life and craving some outlet from me. But I would not let them purposely, would not let them come out. They tormented me till I was ashamed. They drove me to convulsions and sickened me. At last, how they sickened me. Now, are not you fancying, gentlemen, that I am expressing remorse for something now that I am asking your forgiveness for something? I am sure you are fancying that. However, I assure you, I do not care if you are. It was not only that I could not become spiteful, I did not know how to become anything, neither spiteful nor kind, neither a rascal nor an honest man, neither a hero nor an insect. Now I am living out my life in my corner, taunting myself with the spiteful and useless consolation that an intelligent man cannot become anything seriously. And it is only the fool who becomes anything. Yes, a man in the 19th century must end morally ought to be preeminently a characterless creature. A man of character, an active man, is preeminently a limited creature. That is my conviction of 40 years. I am 40 years old now, and 40 years is a whole lifetime. It is extreme old age. To live longer than 40 years is bad manners, is vulgar, immoral. Who does live beyond 40? Answer that sincerely and honestly. I will tell you who do. Fools and worthless fellows. I tell all old men that to their faces. I tell them to their face, all these venerable old men, all these silver-haired and reverend seniors. I tell the whole world that to its face I have a right to say so, or I shall go on living to 60 myself, to 70, to 80. Stay mistaken in that too. I am by no means such a mirthful person as you imagine, or as you may imagine. However, irritated by all this babble, and I feel that you are irritated, you think fit to ask me who I am, then my answer is I am a collegiate assessor. I am a collegiate assessor. 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 I am a collegiate assessor. 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 I am a collegiate assessor. I was in the service that I might have something to eat. I was in the service that I might have something to eat, and solely for that reason. And when last year a distant relation left me 6,000 rubles in his will, I immediately retired from the service and settled down in my corner. I used to live in this corner before, but now I have settled down in it. My room is a wretched, horrid one in the outskirts of the town. My servant is an old country woman, ill-natured from stupidity, and moreover, there is always a nasty smell about her. I am told that the Petersburg climate is bad for me, and that with my small means it is very expensive to live in Petersburg. I know that. I know that. I know all that better than all these sage. I know all that better than all these sage and experienced counselors and monitors. But I am remaining in Petersburg. I am not going away from Petersburg. I am not going away because why? It is absolutely no matter whether I am going away or not going away. But what can a decent man speak of with most pleasure? Answer of himself. Well, so I will talk about myself. Part 2. especially one who has the fatal ill luck to inhabit Petersburg, the most theoretical and intentional town on the whole terrestrial globe. There are intentional and unintentional towns. It would have been quite enough, for instance, to have the consciousness by which all so-called direct persons and men of action live. I bet you think I am writing all this from affectation, to be witty at the expense of men of action, and what is more, that from ill-bred affectation I am clanking a sword like my officer, but gentlemen, whoever can pride himself on his diseases and even swagger over them. Though, after all, everyone does do that. People do pride themselves on their diseases, and I do. Maybe more than anyone. We will not dispute it. My contention was absurd, but yet I am firmly persuaded that a great deal of consciousness, every sort of consciousness, in fact, is a disease. I stick to that. Let us leave that too. For a minute, tell me this. Why does it happen that at the very moments when I am most capable of feeling every refinement of all that is sublime and beautiful, as they used to say at one time, it would, as though of design, happen to me, not only to feel, but to do such ugly things, such that, well, in short, actions that all perhaps commit, but which as though purposely occurred to me at the very time when I was most conscious that the more conscious I was of goodness and all that was sublime and beautiful, the more deeply I sank into my mire, and the more ready I was to sink in it altogether. But the chief point was that all this was, as it were, not accidental in me, but as though it were bound to be so. It was as though was actually believing that this was perhaps my normal condition, but at first in the beginning, what agonies I endured in that struggle, I did not believe it was the same with other people. And all my life I hid this fact about myself as a secret. I was ashamed. I was ashamed. Even now perhaps I am ashamed. I got to the point of feeling a sort of secret abnormal, despicable enjoyment in returning home to my corner on some disgusting Petersburg night. Acutely conscious that day I had committed a loathsome action again, that what was done could never be undone, and secretly, inwardly, gnawing at myself. Gnawing at myself for the tearing and consuming myself till at last the bitterness turned into a sort of shameful, accursed sweetness. And at last into positive, real enjoyment. To positive, real enjoyment, yes. Yes, into enjoyment. I insist upon that. I have spoken of this because I keep wanting to know for a fact whether other people feel such enjoyment. I will explain. The enjoyment was just from the too intense consciousness of one's own degradation. It was from feeling oneself that one had reached the last barrier, that it was horrible, but that it could not be otherwise, that there was no escape for you, that you never could become a different man, that even if time and faith was still left, you to change into something different, you could most likely not wish to change. Or if you did wish to, even then you would do nothing, because perhaps in reality there was nothing for you to change into. And the worst of it was, and the root of it all, that it was all in accord with the normal fundamental laws of over-acute consciousness, and with the inertia that was the direct result of those laws, and that consequently one was not only unable to change, but could do absolutely nothing. Thus, it would follow, as the result of acute consciousness, that one is not to blame as though there were any consolation to the scoundrel. Once he has come to realize that he is actually a scoundrel. But enough. I have talked a lot of nonsense. But what have I? But what have I explained? I have talked a lot of nonsense. But what have I explained? How is enjoyment in this to be explained? But I will explain it. I will get to the bottom of it. That is why I have taken up my pen. I, for instance, have a great deal of amour propre. I am as suspicious. I am as suspicious and prone to take offense as a humpback or a dwarf. I, for instance, have a great deal of amour propre. I am as suspicious and prone to take offense as a humpback or a dwarf. But upon my word, I sometimes have had moments when if I had happened to be slapped in the face, I should perhaps have been positively glad of it. I say in earnest that I should probably have been able to discover, even in that particular sort of enjoyment, the enjoyment, of course, of despair. But in despair there are the most intense enjoyments, especially when one is very acutely conscious of the hopelessness of one's position. And when one is slapped in the face, why, it still turns out that I was always the most to blame in everything. And what is most humiliating of all is to blame for no fault of my own, but, so to say, through the laws of nature. In the first place, to blame because I am cleverer than any of the people surrounding me. I have always considered myself cleverer than any of the people surrounding me, and sometimes, would you believe it, have been positively ashamed of it. Have been positively ashamed of it. At any rate, I have all my life, as it were, turned my eyes away and never could look people straight in the face. Never could look people straight in the face. To blame finally, because even if I had magnanimity, I should have only had more suffering from the sense of his uselessness. I should certainly have never been able to do anything from being magnanimous, neither to forgive for my assailant, would perhaps have slapped me from the laws of nature. And one cannot forgive the laws of nature nor to forget. And one cannot forgive the laws of nature. Nor to forget, for even if it were owing to the laws of nature, it is insulting all the same. Finally, even if I had wanted to be anything but magnanimous, had desired on the contrary to revenge myself on my assailant, I could not have revenged myself on anyone for anything, because I should certainly never